Looks like we're ready to go. Perfect. So I guess first off, how many people got from the airport or from their works to here using Uber? Nice. That's awesome. I love to see that. So really excited to be here talking about scaling a mobile-only company. This is something that we use internally, this talk of mobile-only, because you hear a lot of people saying mobile first. But for us at Uber, this is almost 100% of our traffic, right, comes from mobile. When I gave this, when I sent this keynote to my team, they told me I should add a slide to introduce myself. So I'll start that. So I'm Paul, Senior Engineering Manager at Uber. I was one of the very first mobile people there, started several years ago. Here's the one slide about me, Canadian, like a lot of you guys, came to Silicon Valley to find crazy challenges, a lot of opportunity. I spent some time at Apple, so I went over there and in 2005 and joined the iPod team, and then quickly ended up on iPhone. I worked on iPhone from 1.0 until 5.0 on the apps and frameworks team, so that was a lot of fun. But this is more fun. So Uber, this was a really interesting jump for me. When I talked to the folks there for the first time, I think one of the things that really excited me about Uber was the fact that I had no idea how I was going to do this. This idea of taking mobile and scaling both a product and scaling also a logistics company was going to be just crazy, right? So joined them, really confused, but really, really excited to take on some of these things. So I'll go through some of the big challenges that I saw there in the first couple of years, and things that, Uber's a really young company. I think we've got through a few of these. I think a few of these we're still really trying to figure out and break through, and we've got some great ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to execute on them. All right, so this was the first couple of months of my career there, was when we really started expanding around the US and internationally. And the model worked fairly well, right? We had a business in San Francisco, we had a business in New York, we had a business in Boston, in Chicago. I started when Washington, D.C. launched. So it was great. So we had these couple of cities. And then we went into France and had to add some languages, but mostly, scale wasn't, people would come, how long is it going to take you to change the app to make it work in Paris? I'm like, I'm Canadian, I'm French Canadian, I'll just throw some translations in there, no problem. So we were done in an afternoon. I looked like a hero. It was great. And then we went to the UK. Like, how long is it going to take you to the UK? I'm like, we speak English. We already do English. It's just another map. It's no big deal. I looked like even more of a hero. It was great. So started off really strong, and then things got straight bananas. Where this is a chart. I looked through a lot of kind of our company-wide summary emails to try to pick up all the times that we had launched countries and all of our counts of cities, and things quick. I mean, now we're over 200, right? So obviously, this sort of me looking like a hero like this couldn't last forever. Before I go over to some of the things that really stopped us dead in our tracks, I think it's really important to talk about the framework in which we operate, right? So for mobile things at Uber, first of all, our cities are all startups, right? So every single one of them is an empowered team that's fully responsible for their own cities, right? They decide the product offerings, they work through the pricing, they handle their own support, and they handle their own, not only rider support, but driver support as well. So every time, if you are in, here's our Zurich, Zurich's a bad example. Actually, Zurich's a really good example, because if you email support in Zurich, in Switzerland, you've got people speak German, people speak French, and people speak English. If you email in, you'll get answered by a real person in that language, right? So this was very accidental, but I'm glad I picked them. So again, fully empowered teams. And what's interesting about taking these teams and just telling them to run and encouraging them to be innovative is, fortunately or unfortunately, they innovate. And these folks innovated big. And it started off real fun. We did a lot of on-demand events, on-demand crazy things. The first one was Austin barbecue. It was quick, took us a couple days to throw together. It was great. We ate some, stuffed our faces in barbecue. It was great. Then mariachi in San Francisco. I don't know if a few of you are kind of like old enough Uber users to have seen this, but that was fun. We did on-demand mariachis for Cinco de Mayo. That was great. And then we did La Fête de la Musique in Paris. So what's interesting is that these three came in about the period of 5 weeks, right? And we quickly realized that this was becoming 100% of my job. So I could no longer tell people, yeah, for this thing, it's going to take an afternoon. They just came in. As we expanded cities, it was really important that we shift our understanding of what this mobile app was into a tool for our cities teams. So here I've got a few examples of this. We've got when we did DeLoreans in San Francisco. That was really fun. I almost got run over by one on my bicycle. The one in the middle, that's on-demand lion dances that was in Shanghai, and that was for Chinese New Year. And then you've got everyone's favorite Uber kittens. I promised my team I'd have a lot of cats. And so again, this concept of like geo-deployment, downloadable artwork, dynamic style, all this was just, the app was just a shell to be able to deliver that city's content and their offerings in there. So really a change of every time that we had to build something, we had to keep this in mind, right? So this isn't one thing. We really have to be able to not slow down these cities. They have great ideas. We just have to let them keep going. Then like a lot of these cities started getting really complicated. I put 3 here that are great examples: Berlin, Stockholm, and Milan. So again, seem like perfectly fine cities, not that much different than France or London. What we started, I don't know if anyone's tried to localize German. The word different, everything, especially the way that nouns, verbs are put together, it meant that a lot of we had to work with our copyright team really heavily to be able to get them to understand how every time that we sent around localizations, we had to give a lot of context that were there. So this ended up slowing us down in our tracks. Regulation. A lot of European cities had really different ways of presenting price. What was really interesting is that a lot of these were much clearer than what we do in the US. We actually changed a lot of how we communicate things in the US based on these great concepts that we had found over there. But again, it just slowed us down. And then fraud. So fraud is a huge issue for us. We spend a lot of time. It's a cat and mouse game, right? So you're always trying to stay ahead of that. And we saw all kinds of different fraud come from our businesses in Europe. Now, personally, that wasn't a problem. Nothing is more satisfying than catching a fraudster, so I actually enjoyed that part. But it's great. And then every single thing got difficult after we started expanding past those cities. And this is where we really had to rethink how we were doing mobile development at Uber, because things just got so local that became difficult. I'll give you a few examples. India, China, and Panama. I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with this. In China, there is no Google. So you've got no Google Play services, and you've got no Google Play. So if I start with Google Play, that's something that's not too difficult to deal with. There's a whole array of Chinese app stores. You just deploy to them. They're complicated to use, but you wrestle through it and you do it. But no Google Play services, that's difficult, right? Because all of a sudden you don't have access to maps, which is part of Google Play services. So again, we had to find different people to adapt what we were doing. We were also doing something very specific to one country, which is something that we didn't want to do in the past, but what we had to shift. We'd always had this concept where if you're developing a feature, you should be able to develop so everyone can use it, right? But really now we had to come up with very particular technologies for very particular countries, and this was really difficult to do. Payments is a great example. Credit card adoption is actually low internationally, which is something that being in the U.S., living here, working here, buying coffee here for way too much is, you see that. But when you travel abroad, you get a lot of countries that they don't use that. Different merchants, a lot of prepay, and a lot of cash operations. So Alipay in China we were the first mobile app to integrate Alipay, which is a Chinese online payment provider, into our app. So really proud about that. But again, all this work, we had to dive into one country. This is where things kind of get fun. In Panama, I get a call from our Panama team one day. Got a laser pointer. Perfect. All right. So they started telling me that their drivers were ending up in the ocean, and others were telling me all over the place. It was bananas, and we dug in, and we found this right here, just as an example, Isla Chapilla. It doesn't exist on a map. It's this. You just have this giant block. What else is really interesting is that all this coastline right here is off by about 350 meters. So again, I'm Canadian. I don't know what your feet is, but that's quite a distance. And if you've got a car there, he's going to get really, really lost. So again, we ended up on our own. So we had to deal with some of these things. These things we're still dealing with. Actually, Google is. They fixed this. If you go back today, based on a lot of our reports, they've actually fixed their coastline now, which is great. And now one of the most difficult things that we've had to solve for we have this fixed today in our app. People who have dealt with mapping technology in China have seen that there's a lot of locations that are obfuscated. And here's a great example. This is the border between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is not part of mainland China. It's its own entity, but part of China. And because of that, right here you see that in the Tongue River, there's this river that comes out of it. But as soon as you cross the border between, so this is Google Earth right here. This is Google Maps, and you look at so this one never lies. This one sometimes lies. When you right here, you see as soon as you get past the border of Hong Kong, the river is about 250 meters off, right? So that was really fun to deal with. So all these things as we went in. So we really had to be able to scale to make sure that this concept that we had of we're going to build tools for every cities, it just didn't scale. So number one, and this is fun. We had a lot of your previous presenter talked about this. First off, you had to grow the team. So this is a picture I took of our team working on the feature where in the app, you've got the cars that follow the roads, right? So as they see that they traverse and they stick on the roads and they turn around. That was something that was really important to us. And this is our entire mobile team. What's interesting about our entire mobile team is that not only are they there, but we've also got our entire design team, that guy right there. And we also have our data scientist assumed for app visualization. That's right there. So really, our only mobile people were myself taking this photo, Chris, this guy right here, and Jordan you see hanging out behind there. So it wasn't working. I mean, we were spending all of our times on this expansion. So you've heard some of your previous talk about this. Yeah, scaling the team was just so important. So a lot of hiring, a lot of mentoring, starting classes, making sure that anyone at Uber could contribute to Uber. So making sure that we expanded our build products so that we could go in and allow these people to come in. What was really fun is that as we found out that a lot of people in Silicon Valley are doing really interesting things. Everyone on the team felt that we were doing it too. So going out and just telling people about low-cost transportation, really good jobs for our drivers, and being able to build a product that was safe and all this. We were able to bring in quite a few people and train a lot others. And now, I mean, we've got just a ton of people contributing to the code base, which is great. Well, actually, it started off being great. Where it gets a little bit, when you've got one team, there's a lot of coordination of having to figure out what projects people are working on. So here's the cat pictures I was promising. So at Uber today, we have 17 product verticals. And it was really important that instead of all of us sitting together, we kind of decentralized the concept of mobile. So every single product vertical had its own mobile people in the team. That really helped them just move really fast. But you end up with all the opposite problems that happens when you try to do that, which is we were separated. People were coming up with their own solutions to the same problems. So after that happened, we really doubled down on trying to make sure that we had a really good community. So a lot of meetings, a lot of like, I say meetings, but like going to breakfast, having talks about what technologies we would import, making sure that as we were having a really, really good chat group where a lot of people were able to dump ideas on there, going to a lot of talks like this together, just to make sure that even though we weren't sitting together, even though we weren't actively working every day, we kept sort of our eye on the prize and all kind of sprinting in the same direction. The second, again, these are themes that you guys are seeing throughout the day, the build train. This was huge for us. So a lot of people who have shipped code for iOS know the problems that comes up when you're dealing with app review, right? So if you look here, as we started having a lot of contributors to the system, it was just we were just shipping apps as soon as they were being reviewed. Boom, new app in the store, bam, new app in the store. It was going crazy, and that's really, really difficult to scale, right? So instead, if you look here, back in the last sort of 3 quarters, we've sort of we've come up with a weekly cadence. And with that, we're essentially shipping about the theoretical max that you can get, which is 12 releases in a quarter, which is where we aim. These 2 lines, why they're not to 12, and this one is all because of rejections from the store. So pretty normal when you've got an aggressive company trying to get a lot of product out there. So it's great. So we're hitting that. And the good thing is, as people were, you could always count on another release coming in the next day, coming in the next week, coming in the next week. So that was great. It really helped people plan. Next, this one a little controversial. As we did that, it was really important. You've got builds going out every single week. So it's important to make sure that as people go out, they keep that mentality of you keep needing to move fast, right? But you have to. One thing that we really try to do at Uber is think of speed and quality as something that we need to innovate on as well, right? So how do you should be optimizing for one, you really have to be innovating in both. And one of what really helped us that is coming up with a concept of monitoring is at least as important as testing. Not that testing isn't important, but monitoring is definitely as important. When something goes out there, especially with that many folks contributing to your code base, there's going to be things that they don't expect. So it's important to make sure when it goes out there. I looked so hard to try to find a cat picture that was like at a control center. I apologize for not being able to find one. When you do this, great things happen, right? If you can actually manage this. And I wanted to look specifically in our last 6 weeks about what are things that we'd shipped that kind of took really big advantage, really huge advantages from this system. And Uberpool, UberRush, UberFresh. These are products I'm such a huge fan of those. Uberpool, the concept of being able to lower prices but increase driver take home. It's just great. The driver's just constantly on a trip. He's constantly, every single minute when he's driving, he's actually earning money, and customers are getting a lower cost. I mean, these are great. But again, they've got to innovate. Even though these are fully, very, very mobile heavy products, very front-end heavy products, we've got to come up with ideas where they can ship really often, they can iterate. And this concept of having a weekly release train really helped them out with that. Yeah, we're a young company. This is just the beginning. I'm really excited to see what this presentation looks like. Hopefully when I come back and do it next year. But yeah, so in 2012, hopefully we'll keep going with this, and there you go. Thank you. I'm Paul at Uber. If you guys have any questions, send me an email. Thank you.
So why don't Kieran and David come up, and we'll take Q&A for a good 5 minutes, and then let you guys take a break for a second. So any questions on any of the 3 topics?
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Any question? There we go.
So, sorry, the question is for, I forgot your name, sorry. It's about Buck. So how do you integrate Buck with testing tools? You talked a lot about speed up and the advantages and how to get over the 64K limit, but not about testing integration. So I'm curious about that.
So the 2 main types of tests that we do at Facebook are unit tests, on our Android code base, are unit tests with Roboelectric and automation testing where we run the app on a device or emulator and interact with it programmatically. For the unit tests, Buck does have built-in support for running JUnit tests, and I think there's a pull request out for TestNG, and it is able to integrate Roboelectric into those JUnit tests. So most of our tests are just run with Buck. You say Buck test, and it builds everything the way it always does. It runs the tests with JUnit and Roboelectric. I don't know as much about the emulator testing, but they do use Buck to run those. We don't support what they call instrumentation tests, where you just ship the APK to the device and run your instrumentation code. We can build those APKs, but Buck will not run those tests for you.
Hi, this is a question for Uber. Do you see any feedback from end users when you're releasing apps every week? Have you done any studies? Is it too soon? Is it just perfect? Obviously, a lot of users have auto updates, but for the ones who don't have.
Yeah, that's a great question. We see very little feedback. Most people are so excited about the new features that sort of gets kind of hidden away. In general, the auto update is what saves us, right? So, I mean, if that wasn't there, then I think people would see it. Also, the other thing that we've noticed, because we actually, we were concerned that would be an issue, but in general, people have so many updates that they push them. I think that the key to that for us was just being really, really transparent and clear. And if you look at our release notes, that's something that we take pretty seriously. We even localize them. So yeah, I think as long as you're careful with that and people know what you're doing, then yeah, we haven't had any problem with it. It's a great question.
Hi. So one of the things I'm hearing a lot throughout today is the people moving mobile from platform to product, and in so doing, not being able to hire enough people. So overlaying training programs instead of trying to hire everybody to accomplish that. I'm wondering if whoever of the 3 of you has experienced can elaborate on what the logistics of those training programs look like internally.
So I can talk about what we do at LinkedIn. So at LinkedIn, we did a training program. We used a company called Big Nerd Ranch, which I think actually Facebook had used at some point. It's a 1-week iOS training course, 1-week Android training course, and then we do a 2-week apprenticeship, which is pretty much they come and work on a feature or bug fix area, and they have somebody who's already part of the mobile team to sort of help them get in, sort of submit code, write tests, and get the thing out in the build. That's what we ended up doing. Then I think next year we're actually looking at building our own internal training program for that.
Facebook's pretty similar. We also have a number of courses that we developed internally that are for things specific to Facebook that are taught by the engineers, usually like an hour.
Yeah, Uber does all these things. So we've got courses, but at the end of the day, it really just is about, a lot of people need to contribute, right? They don't want to spend, they're not going to spend their whole day at this. So we have a core team, and again, if depending on your product, they'd be easier or less easy to hire for. But it's just making sure that your core team is really aware of this, is really embracing it, and making sure that they're putting out really good wikis. They're participating in the training programs, which we do. I gave one just last week. We go through, making sure that you invest in making sure that your build tools are really easy to use. You want people to be able to just download stuff and just hit run and have it work really easily. What's really fun about Uber, what helped a lot, is that on people's first day, they get set up using the iOS simulator. So the iOS simulator has this fantastic feature in it, which gives you like a faked trip. Well, actually, it's a real trip, but it's built in a simulator from Cupertino up to San Francisco. So again, for us, that's really helpful because it's got built-in motion. So yeah, little ways to bring it in and just make sure everyone's really familiar with it. Yeah, which is helpful. It's a good question.
One last question. David, you had mentioned that ADB tops out at like 4 to 6 megabytes per second. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to speed up build times further using the network to transfer the files instead?
I haven't tried that. I think there's a lot of operational problems with that I don't want to spend time helping people debug their network connection, especially like wired to wireless.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up here. Let's give a round of applause for our awesome speakers. Great job, guys. Thank you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. So we'll start just a hair after 3. Or what? Yep, 3. And I know people had other questions. You can ask them in the group. Again, everyone should join the group.